Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to be discussing how to write the research question, methodology and modification sections of your report. So the research question, this is the question that will be answered from your final data that you're going to collect. So after you have completed the modified experiment and you have your sets of data, that data should answer this question. Alright, so to do that effectively, the research question has to be written quite clearly and concisely. Alright, and the best way to do that is to use this format here that I have provided for you. Okay, so what effect does insert the independent variable here have on insert the dependent variable here? So, the independent variable is the variable that you are going to change. So think about the variable that you chose to modify in your modified experiment, okay? And that is what you're going to put here. The independent variable is what you are changing in the modified experiment, okay? The dependent variable is what you are measuring. And again, I take you all the way back to your rationale from the previous video, what you've already done. The main thing that I'm trying to measure here and work out, the main thing that I care about is the rates of a chemical reaction. Alright, so that is my dependent variable. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm measuring the amount of hydrogen gas produced over time, and in doing so, that's going to give me a value for the rate of the reaction for that chemical reaction. Alright, so the dependent variable is the rates of reaction. Alright, the speed at which that took place. So, what effect does whatever variable that you are choosing have on the dependent variable? Moving on, the methodology. Now, this is all based on and I'm going to highlight this point here, the original experiment. So the first one that we did, okay? So the first thing that you're going to need is to provide a brief overview of the original experiment. So what was conducted, what was investigated, so what were we trying to find, all right, and what was the outcome. Also specify the number of variations and trials that was conducted in the original experiment. Okay, so something along the lines of the original experiment was conducted in order to test for the rates of reactions of hydrochloric acid and magnesium. Explain quick little brief overview there of what happens in the experiment, and again, don't use I, we, stuff like that in first person. This is all third person. Okay, so not I did this in the experiment. Okay, it was in the experiment. Hydrochloric acid was mixed with magnesium. Now, what you can do here as well is add in a little chemical equation of what happened in the experiment as well. So like, Mg plus HCl arrow and what was produced. Alright, you can add that in there as well. And state what was investigated. Well, obviously the rate at which this chemical reaction occurred was calculated. If you would like, you can put down what those rates of those reactions were. You don't need to put all of the results in here. Alright, it's just an overview of what the experiment was. Okay, and what we were testing for. So in the original experiment, we tested 3 different surface areas. So you need to mention that as well. So the whole point of the original experiment was to see the impact that the variable of surface area has on the rates of reactions. Alright, and also specify the number of trials and variations. So obviously there was 3 variations and we only did each of them 1 trial each. Okay, so that's just a small little paragraph required. And that is your methodology. All of this related to the original experiment. Alright, that's giving us a basis of then what we are then going to then go modify and refine and reconduct for our modified experiment. Alright, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is the modifications heading. Okay, so in this we're going to provide a brief overview of modifications to that original experiment, along with a justification as to why those modifications were made. All right, and the two things that we need in this heading is how it was refined and how was it extended. And I'll explain what those two words mean. The layout of this heading should be a paragraph. Okay, so you can start the paragraph by saying something along the lines of like, in order to modify and refine, or in order to extend and refine the original experiment, okay, a number of changes can be made, blah blah blah, dot dot dot, and we can then go into detail what those changes were and how that refines and extends. Okay, so I've given you guys a heading there, and in order to modify or extend and refine the experiment, multiple changes can be made. These are these. All right, so that's your sentence, your introductory sentence there. It's going to be a bit of a paragraph. All right, so the word refined means ways in which you made the experiment more accurate or precise. So how you made the data more reliable. Okay, because reliability is then related to both accuracy and precision. They are two different things. Okay, so how did we get more reliable data from the original to the modified? Okay, so think of what are some things that we changed. All right, if I take you back to the original, we changed the variation 3 times, and we only did 1 trial of each. Think about the amounts of trials and variations we did for the modified experiment. That should be different. All right. So that is a way in which we refined the experiment. Conducting a trial more times will then give us more chances to notice if there's an outlier or error in the data somewhere. And if we can recognize that, then we can obviously exclude that. We can average out the results, and we can get a more reliable piece of data. Okay, so that is refining the experiment. Now, extending the experiment means changing something or adding something to get more information. Okay, in the original experiment, the information that I got was how did surface area impact rates of reactions. In the original, so modified experiment, you guys are conducting how a different variable also impacts rates of reactions. So you are extending the experiment by working out how other variables affects rates of reactions. So you're going to test for other variables. So testing for other variables is essentially extending that experiment, the original experiment that was created. Okay, so you can mention something along the lines of, now this can be done. This was done to identify, say, which variable had the larger impact on rates of reactions, surface area, or the one at which you conducted in your modified experiment. So again, this modifications tab should be a bit of a paragraph, all right, explaining the ways in which you have refined and extended the experiment, the modified experiment, from the original experiment, and outlining exact ways in which you have done that and how that is extending and refining our results. Okay, so that is an overview of the research question, methodology, and modifications tabs for you guys. Thank you very much.